My best friend and girlfriend betrayed me in my own house. 5 years later, I discovered they hid my son from me. I sued for custody, and what happened left them speechless. I'm 34 years old. I work in digital marketing, and until about a year and a half ago, my life was finally where I wanted it to be, after years of rebuilding myself from scratch. But then everything got complicated again in a way I never imagined. And I need to tell this because I literally can't believe it's real sometimes. I guess I should start from the beginning. When I was 29 and thought I had everything figured out, my life, my future, my relationships, all that stuff. Back then, I was living with my best friend Mike in a pretty decent apartment in the city. We'd been living together for like 3 years and it was great. I mean, we were practically brothers. We'd known each other since college and I trusted him completely. There was also my girlfriend, Rachel. We'd been together for 2 years and things were going well, like really well. I was thinking about rings and all that commitment stuff because I felt like she was the person I wanted to be with for the rest of my life. I was working at a small agency, had an amazing group of friends. We'd go out every weekend, have barbecues, watch games together. The typical life of 20-somethings who think they have everything under control, you know what I mean? But turns out all that was basically a lie, or at least a big part of it. One day in March, I think it was March 2019, I get a message from Brian, another friend from the group but not as close as Mike, and he sends me a screenshot with no context, just the image. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. It was a text conversation between Rachel and someone else, and when I started reading, I realized it was Mike. And they were talking about seeing each other that night, but not to grab a beer exactly, you know what I mean. There were messages from weeks back, months even, talking about meetups, about hiding, about how I could never find out. And there was one that said something like, "He almost caught us the other night. I almost died of fright." And there I was, sitting at my desk at the office, trying to process what the hell I was reading. I texted Brian asking where he got that from, and he said someone had passed it to him, that he'd been debating for days whether to tell me or not, but felt I deserved to know. I left the office, didn't even tell anyone I was leaving, just grabbed my stuff and drove home with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The whole way, I kept thinking maybe it was a misunderstanding, maybe it was Photoshop or something, any explanation other than the obvious one, but deep down I knew it was real because everything started making sense. Like all those times Rachel would cancel plans last minute, or when Mike would say he had to stay late at work but his car was in the parking lot, or those weird looks I'd sometimes catch between them that I'd dismiss as my own paranoia. I got to the apartment around 3 in the afternoon. Normally neither of them would be there at that time because Rachel, he worked until 6, and Mike supposedly did too. But when I opened the door, I heard noises coming from Mike's room. I went upstairs. My heart was beating so hard I felt like it was going to explode. And when I opened his bedroom door, there they were. And I'm not going to go into details, but it was exactly what I expected to find, and at the same time, something you're never really prepared for, you know? Rachel screamed. Mike jumped up trying to cover himself and started with the, "Bro, I can explain." And I just stood there for a few seconds, literally couldn't even speak. I felt like I was watching the scene from outside my body. I finally told them they had an hour to get their stuff out of my apartment because technically the lease was in my name, and I left to walk around because if I stayed there, I don't know what I would have done. Rachel followed me to the parking lot trying to grab my arm, saying she was sorry, that it had been a mistake, that she loved me, all the typical shit people say when they get caught, and I just told her to get away from me, that I never wanted to see her again. Mike didn't even come down. I guess he knew there was nothing he could say to fix what he'd just destroyed. I spent the next few weeks in a kind of fog. I stayed in the apartment, but it was horrible being there. Every corner reminded me of them, of the lies, of everything I thought was real but wasn't. The rest of the friend group split up. Some tried to stay neutral, others clearly took Mike and Rachel's side, and I just couldn't deal with that, with seeing anyone who was in contact with them. So, I made a decision that in retrospect was probably the best thing I could have done. I moved out of state, went back to where I grew up, where my family was, changed my number, deleted all my social media, basically disappeared from that life completely. The first few months were tough. I'm not going to lie. I felt like I'd lost everything. My relationship, my best friend, my social, group, my routine, everything. But little by little, I started rebuilding myself. Got a better job at a bigger agency. Started therapy because I clearly needed to process all that. Made new friends. Picked up hobbies I'd abandoned. Like I started running again and playing guitar, things that made me feel like myself. And about 2 years after moving, I met Emma at a networking event. And she is, amazing. Completely different from Rachel in every way. Honest, straightforward, down to earth. And we built something real, something solid, without drama or lies. Fast forward to about a year and a half ago, Emma and I had been together for 3 years, and I decided to propose to her. I did it in a super simple but meaningful way for us, at the same cafe where we had our first real date, and she said yes, obviously, and we were over the moon, making wedding plans, looking at venues, all that. I decided to reactivate my Instagram after years of not using it, basically to share the engagement news with people I'd lost touch with. I posted a photo of us with the ring and a simple caption saying we were getting married. And I thought it would be nice to reconnect with some people from my past who had nothing to do with that whole horrible situation. But turns out Rachel saw the photo. I don't know how, because we weren't friends on social media or anything. I guess someone showed it to her, or she actively looked me up, and she started trying to contact me. First, it was direct messages that I completely ignored. Didn't even read them past the first line, just deleted them. Then I blocked her, but then she started creating fake profiles to message me. And when I blocked those too, she started writing to Emma, telling her she needed to talk to me about something urgent, that it was important, that it wasn't what it seemed. Emma told me immediately, obviously, because we have that kind of relationship where there are no secrets, and I explained who Rachel was and the whole story. And Emma told me to do what I felt was right, but that she supported me completely. I decided to keep ignoring her because honestly I didn't see any reason to have that person back in my life under any circumstances. I had worked too hard to get over all that to go backwards. But then, like a week later, I get a call from my sister Lisa. And Lisa never calls me unless it's something serious. We usually just text. She tells me that Rachel contacted her, that she found her number somehow, and that she told her something she needed to tell me immediately. I was already annoyed. Like really annoyed, because who dares to harass my family after what she did? I told Lisa I didn't want to know anything about Rachel, that I didn't care what she had to say. But Lisa told me, Daniel, this is serious. She says you have a son. I swear I felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. I asked her what the hell she was talking about, and Lisa repeated that Rachel had told her I had a 5-year-old son, that his name was Noah, that he was born after I moved away, and that Mike had been raising him as if he were his, but that now they needed to tell me the truth. My first instinct was to think it was another lie, another manipulation, because how is it possible that for 5 years no one told me there was a kid who was supposedly mine? It didn't make any sense. The math didn't even add up right in my head at that moment because I was in total shock. I talked to Emma that same night, told her everything, and she told me we needed to handle it the right way. That I couldn't just ignore this, even if there was a chance it was a lie. That I needed to know the truth one way or another. I hired a lawyer the next day, one who specialized in family law, and I explained the whole situation to him. The original betrayal, the years of silence, the sudden paternity claim, everything. He told me the first thing was to establish communication through him, not to talk directly with Rachel or Mike, and to demand immediate proof before taking any steps. My lawyer wrote to Rachel. She responded almost immediately and sent photos of the kid. And when I saw them, I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, because this kid, Noah, was identical to me when I was that age. Like there were photos of me when I was 5 that my mom kept, and it was like seeing an exact copy. He had my nose, my eyes, the same face shape, even the way he smiled was the same. And in that moment, I knew it was probably true. But I still needed scientific confirmation because I couldn't base something so important just on physical resemblances. The process for the DNA test was complicated because Rachel put up obstacles from the start. She said she was afraid of traumatizing the child, that Mike was the only father Noah knew, that this was going to destroy their family. But my lawyer was firm and told her that either she cooperated voluntarily or we were going to court to force it legally. She finally agreed, We did the test through a certified lab, and the weeks of waiting were absolute torture. Like I couldn't sleep well, couldn't concentrate at work. My mind was constantly on this kid who might be my son, on the 5 years I'd lost, on everything this meant for my future with Emma. The results came on a Tuesday morning. My lawyer called me and told me the probability of paternity was 99.9%. That scientifically, I was Noah's biological father. I sat in my car in the office parking lot and cried, I don't even know for how long. It was a mix of so many emotions I couldn't even process them all. Rage toward Rachel for hiding it from me, toward Mike for raising my son knowing he might not be his, sadness for all the lost time, fear for what was coming, but also something like hope, you know? Because I had a son. There was a part of me in the world I didn't know existed, and suddenly, that was the most important thing. Turns out Mike is sterile. That's what triggered this whole situation, apparently. He and Rachel had been trying to have another child, and after several failed attempts, he got tested, and they discovered he'd never been able to have children, which meant Noah couldn't be his biologically. Rachel had to admit the truth, that she'd been with me right before I discovered her affair with Mike, and that when she realized she was pregnant, she assumed it was Mike's, or simply decided it was more convenient to say it was. I'm not sure what her exact reasoning was, and honestly, I don't care. What she did was unforgivable either way. I told my lawyer I wanted immediate visitation rights, that I was willing to pay retroactive child support if necessary, but that I wasn't going to be just a monthly check, that I wanted to be in my son's life, know him, be his father for real. Mike went crazy over this. His lawyer sent letters saying he was the real father in all the ways that mattered, that he'd been there since birth, that Noah called him dad, that I had no right to come in and destroy their family just because I shared DNA with the kid. And look, I understand it must be devastating for him. Discovering the child he thought was his isn't, but that doesn't change the fact that he's my biological son and that they robbed me of 5 years of his life. There was an in-person meeting that my lawyer organized, basically to see if we could reach some agreement without having to go to court, and it was horrible. Probably one of the worst experiences of my life. Rachel was there crying, saying she was sorry, that she'd made a mistake, that she was scared to tell me at the time because I had cut off all contact and she didn't know how to find me, which is total garbage because my family was always in the same place. My sister, my parents. It wasn't impossible to locate me if she'd really wanted to. Mike was sitting next to her with his arms crossed, looking at me with pure hatred, and I just kept thinking about how this guy had been my best friend, how we'd shared years of our lives, and how now we were on opposite sides of a conference table fighting over a child neither of us knew under normal circumstances. Rachel proposed that I could see Noah occasionally, like maybe once a month, but that it had to be in secret, without telling him who I really was, introducing me as a family friend or something. Basically, they wanted me to be a peripheral presence in my own son's life and be grateful for it. I told them to go fuck themselves. Literal. Those were my words. I told them I wasn't going to be an embarrassing secret, that this kid deserved to know the truth about who his biological father was, and that I deserved the chance to be his father for real, not just a stranger who shows up occasionally with gifts. Mike called me that night. I don't know how he got my number, because I definitely hadn't given it to him. And he told me I was selfish, that I was only thinking about myself and not what was best for Noah, that the kid didn't know me, and that forcing a relationship was going to be traumatic for him. I told him what was traumatic was hiding his existence from me for 5 years, that if they really cared about Noah's well-being, they should have told me from the beginning, and that now we were going to have to deal with the consequences of their decisions as the adults we were. He told me he was going to fight this to the end, that he would never allow me to enter his son's life, and I reminded him that legally he wasn't his son, and I know that was cruel, but I was so angry, so hurt, that I wanted him to feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. The next few months were basically a constant legal battle. Meetings with lawyers, court dates, mediations, all that horrible and exhausting process. Emma was with me every step of the way, literal every one. She'd come with me to meetings even though she didn't have to. She'd hold me when I felt like I couldn't go on. She'd remind me why I was doing this when I doubted if all the pain and money and stress was worth it. My parents also supported me. My mom especially was devastated to know she had a grandson she didn't know, but she was also proud that I was fighting for my rights as a father. We finally reached an agreement after like 6 or 7 months of back and forth. I got regular scheduled visitation rights, starting with supervised visits every 2 weeks and eventually building toward full weekends, with the possibility of expanding the time as Noah and I developed our relationship. We also agreed that Noah would be told the truth in an age-appropriate way, with the help of a child therapist, because we all finally agreed that lying to him or keeping secrets was only going to cause him more harm in the long run. Mike kept primary custody, which hurt me, but I understood it was most stable for Noah at the moment, and I started paying child support, which honestly was the easiest part of all this. Like, money is the least of it when it comes to your son. The first time I saw Noah in person was at a park. There was a social services supervisor there with us, and I was more nervous than at any other time in my life, even more than when I proposed to Emma. He arrived holding Rachel's hand. He was smaller than I thought he'd be. He was wearing a dinosaur t-shirt and light-up sneakers. And when he saw me, he hid behind his mom's legs, because obviously I was a stranger to him. Rachel crouched down and told him something. He looked at me with those eyes that were exactly like mine, and I said, "Hi," that my name was Daniel, that I was happy to meet him. I'm not going to say it was magical or perfect, because it wasn't. It was awkward and weird, and he clearly didn't understand why I was there, but we played for a while at the park. He showed me how he could swing super high, and when I laughed, he smiled, and it was like seeing my own smile reflected in another person. And something inside me just clicked. Like, this is my son. This little person exists because I exist, and it doesn't matter how complicated everything else is. This is the most important thing I've done in my life. Even though I didn't even know I was doing it. We've had several visits since then. Little by little, he's getting used to me. He still calls me Daniel and not Dad, and he'll probably call me Daniel for a good while, and that's okay. I'm not going to force anything. They told him the truth about 2 months ago, in a very simple way. Basically that Daniel is his biological dad, but that Mike is also his dad because he raised him, and that he can have 2 dads and both love him. Something like that, and he seemed to take it well, although who knows what he's really processing in that 6-year-old head, because yeah, he just turned 6 a few weeks ago, and Mike didn't let me go to his birthday party, which hurt, but well, small battles. Emma met Noah about a month ago. It was during one of our park visits. She came with me because I wanted her to meet this person who's now so important in my life. And Noah asked her if she was my girlfriend, and when we told him we were getting married, he said, "Cool," and kept playing. And Emma looked at me with tears in her eyes and squeezed my hand, and I knew this was going to work, that we were going to be a weird and non-traditional family, but family nonetheless. I still haven't forgiven Rachel. I don't know if I ever will, honestly. Every time I see her when I pick up or drop off Noah, I feel that old rage trying to rise again. But I swallow it because it's not about her or me. It's about Noah and giving him the most stable and happy life possible. Mike and I basically don't talk. We communicate through short functional text messages about Noah's schedules and needs, and it'll probably be like that always. I don't see a reality where he and I are friends again, or where I can forget what he did. But I can coexist with him for my son's sake. Emma and I are getting married next year. We're planning a small, intimate ceremony, and we already asked Noah if he wants to be our ring bearer, and he said yes, very excited. And that makes me happy in a way I can't even explain. I'm building a relationship with my son, step by step, visit by visit, and yes, I lost 5 years. I'll never get back. There are first words I didn't hear, first steps I didn't see, birthdays and Christmases I wasn't there for, and that's something I'll have to live with always. But what matters now is the future, the next 5 years, and the 5 after those, and all the ones to come. Last week, Noah asked me if I could teach him to ride a bike. That Mike had tried, but he was scared, and he thought maybe I could help him. I told him, of course, that next time I saw him, we'd practice together. And after he left, I sat in my car in the park parking lot thinking that finally, after all this mess, after all the betrayal and pain and legal fight and stress, I have a chance to be the dad I never knew I could be, and that's enough for now, I guess.